This tiny piece of plastic is the best addition I've made to my backpacking gear list in the last couple of years. The Backcountry Bidet, a simple yet surprisingly effective way to clean up after pooping in the wild. So how does it work? Well, it's pretty simple. If you're out backpacking, you probably have yourself a typical plastic water bottle from a supermarket. If you don't, you're gonna need one of these, and the bidet will fit into most of them. It just simply pops in just like that. Has a little rubber seal, so there shouldn't be any leakage. And you just squeeze the bottle, and a pretty powerful stream of water should come out, and it'll clean you off very nicely. If you've used a bidet before that's attached to a toilet, or you've got one at home, you'll know how it works, but out here, you just have to do the aiming yourself, which I guess is the hard part. I'm gonna give you guys a full demonstration of how I use a backcountry bidet in the wild to clean up. I'll do that in just a minute, but first let's go through some pros and cons. Okay, some pros. First of all, backcountry bidets are very lightweight, which is exactly what you want on trail. To be fair, toilet paper is pretty light as well, but if you're in the wild for like a week or more, you're going to be carrying quite a significant amount of toilet paper, and so the bidet is actually going to save you some weight. They're also pretty affordable, and you're going to save money in the long term, not having to buy toilet paper over and over again. These things last pretty much forever. I've never had to replace one. The one I use is like 20 Australian dollars, the Cool Clean. I've linked that in the description below or in a comment somewhere if you want to purchase it for yourself. It's also just really effective. I end up way cleaner using a backcountry bidet than I ever did using a significant amount of toilet paper. Once you've had a lot of practice and you get really good at using the bidet, you won't have to use anything else besides the water, and you end up squeaky clean. And lastly, which is actually the reason I switched to the backcountry bidet originally, is it really lines up with leave no trace principles. Depending where you're hiking in the world, you might have to pack out your toilet paper with you once it's been used. That was the case on the Pacific Crest Trail, where I first used a backcountry bidet, and the idea of just carting around tons of used toilet paper in my backpack till I reached the next town was pretty gross to me. And with the backcountry bidet, you're obviously going to cut right down on how much used toilet paper you have to carry. And if you're in an area where it's technically legal to be able to bury toilet paper, it's just nice to be able to not do that whatsoever and avoid animals digging up and spreading used toilet paper all over the backcountry. Okay, so what are the cons? Well, there's probably one obvious one, and that's the fact that it requires water to be able to use it, and depending where you're hiking, that could be a major factor. If water is scarce, it's definitely not ideal to use a heap on going to the bathroom, and it's also not ideal to have to carry a lot of extra water between water sources as well. With a bit of practice and planning though, these issues can be mitigated slightly by planning your water stops with your poop stops. Sometimes nature does call those, so you do always have to have a little bit of water on hand. If you do manage to hold your poop in until you reach a water source, remember to always walk a couple hundred meters away from that water source before you do your business as well. Another con is that it's just not as simple to use as toilet paper. Most of you guys have probably wiped your ass plenty of times with TP, but haven't used a bidet, and it does take a bit of skill to get it right. When I first got my backcountry bidet, I actually set it up next to my toilet on a water bottle just like this, so I could practice at home before heading out onto trail, and I think that made a major difference. All right, here's how to actually use the damn thing, or at least how I use it. I've got my little toilet kit in a Ziploc bag. First thing I do, find a good spot away from a water source, away from people, away from the trail, and grab my trusty trowel out, and then I'm gonna dig a hole 10, 15, 20 centimeters deep, as well as you can manage. Luckily it's quite easy here to get a hole done. Nice soft sand. I like to try and keep all the sand that I dig out of the hole nearby, because we're going to be filling it in a second. Once the hole is dug, I'm not going to pull my pants down. This is YouTube after all, but squat over the hole. I am a big fan of just simply squatting, getting nice and low like this. I know some people lean up against a tree or hold onto a branch, or maybe build a bit of a throne to actually sit on. And then once the business is done, I've got my bidet ready right next to me. And then there's multiple techniques that you can use. For me, I'm a big fan of between the legs, squirting it right from under there. You'll get pretty good no matter what technique you use with practice. Another common technique is to go from behind, squirt like that. For me, that feels a bit more challenging to aim properly. I do love a between the legger, and Once again, the more practice that you have, the better you'll get at this. I'm at the point now where I usually just use the bidet, then I'll drip dry a little bit and bury my poop and move on. I do carry a bit of toilet paper with me though, and if I'm not as confident of my cleanliness, I will grab usually like 1 or 2 squares just to pat it dry and make sure that it's all clean, which 99% of the time it is. Some bidet users may use their bare hand, the one that they're not squirting the water with, to sort of squirt and clean. To me, that's a bit much and obviously not super sanitary. But regardless of the way you choose to do it, always use hand sanitizer afterward to make sure that you're not carrying around poop particles on your hand for the rest of the day, because you decide to sit down for lunch after taking a poo. That's a great way to get very, very sick. But you can see how much toilet paper is potentially saved. You're either using none or a very little amount, where if you were just using toilet paper and you weren't using the bidet, you might go through 10, 20 squares, depending how good you are using the toilet paper. So that's my process. Obviously, once I'm done, pull the pants back up, grab my trowel, bury it, get all that sand back in there. Ideally, you've buried it nice and deep, so hopefully no animals are going to come and dig it back up. And then I usually like putting a stick in, especially if I'm near the trail of where I pooped, and then other hikers should get the hint that this spot has been taken and to not dig up your poop. And that's it. All right, before we wrap up, I'm just going to answer a couple of questions that I get all the time about backcountry bideting. Firstly, do I use a dedicated water bottle for just bideting? And no, I don't. I tend to just put my bidet on whatever water bottle is easiest to access, or whichever water bottle has water in it. Splashback and like contamination of your bottle or your water is pretty much never going to happen, especially once you've used it a few times in practice. You're not shoving this thing like 2 inches from your butt. It should be, you know, a foot or so away, and shouldn't get sort of any splashback or any issues. At least I've never ever had that issue before, so I just use whichever bottle is easiest. Do I use filtered or dirty water for the bidet? That's a good question. Generally, I will use my filtered water if I have some, and if I don't and I need to go, I'm usually quite happy to just use my dirty water, obviously depending how clean it is. If I was willing to like swim in the water source that I collected the water from, I'm quite happy to use it to bidet. But if it was like some filthy, contaminated, gross water, I'd probably put the effort into filtering it first before spraying it on my butt. Lastly, would I recommend using a backcountry bidet? Answer is absolutely yes. I always recommend other hikers that I meet and talk to that aren't using one to at least try it. For me, it's been a game changer. I'll never go back. If you are interested in buying the one that I use from Cool or Clean, just click the first link in the description, or I'll put it in the pinned comment as well. And you can go buy it, test it out, and let me know how you go. All right, guys, that's it for this video. I hope you guys found it useful. And like I said, if you do end up using a backcountry bidet for the first time, let me know how it goes. Feel free to ask any questions in the comments below. Drop your backcountry bideting tips down there as well. I'm always keen to get better at it. In reality, I've only been using a backcountry bidet for like a year, so I'm quite new to it. But yes, as I said, never going back. Like the video if you enjoyed it, guys, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more backpacking tips and to catch up with all of my adventures. I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.